So every day in Tennessee, over 400 car accidents happen. So today we're going to break down the most common types of car accidents in the state of Tennessee, how you can avoid them, and what to do if you are involved in one. So these are some of the numbers I just showed you, but there were 1,323 traffic fatalities in 2023 in the state of Tennessee. Almost 200,000 total crashes, and nearly 50,000 of those resulted in injuries. So, what are the most dangerous counties in Tennessee when it comes to traffic fatalities? Well, not surprisingly, they're concentrated in the urban areas. But what is a little bit interesting to me, anyway, is that Shelby County has way more traffic fatalities than Davidson. I would have guessed that Shelby and Davidson would be roughly comparable. But in fact, Shelby County has way more traffic fatalities than Davidson County. The number one cause of traffic accidents in the state of Tennessee is distracted driving. Cell phones account for 32.5% of all distracted driving cases. Young drivers aged 16 to 24 are the highest risk group for this, but obviously it is a major societal problem and everybody's on their phones. The number two biggest cause is large truck accidents. So commercial trucks are heavier. They tend to be driving on the interstate where the speed limit is higher. And as a result, they are more dangerous and more deadly. Commercial trucks were involved in 163 fatalities in the year 2023. 1 in 8 highway deaths in Tennessee involves a large truck. So what is the top cause of trucking accidents in Tennessee? It is the failure to keep a proper lane. So you can use this data point to protect yourself on the highway, on the roads. If you are near a tractor trailer or an 18-wheeler or a big rig truck, make sure that that truck is not attempting or about to attempt to change lanes. Never pass that truck on the right, always pass on the left, and always make yourself very visible. And understand how to avoid the blind spots of those truck drivers because they are much larger blind spots in larger vehicles. So you can do a little research on that. But basically, you want to make sure you're not in the blind spot. You want to make sure you are passing on the left. Truck accident cases often involve complex liability issues. I have done a whole video on this, but there's usually many different defendants. There's many different theories of negligence, including improper maintenance, driver fatigue, corporate negligence, broker liability, all different kinds of things that you get into in a truck accident. It's a bit different from your regular car accident case. So the number 3 cause of traffic accidents in the state of Tennessee is alcohol impaired driving. So in 2023, nearly 8,000 crashes in Tennessee involved alcohol. These crashes are 15 times more deadly than the average crash. And a third of these crashes involve a combination of alcohol and drugs. So this has to do with when you're on the road. Obviously, don't drink and drive. Don't ride with someone who's drinking and driving. And try to stay off the roads if you can at peak hours when people might be drinking and driving. If there's a different way, you could use rideshare or maybe go a different route. Avoid perhaps interstates or high speed lanes of travel at peak times when people might be drunk on the roads. It's hard to say in Nashville, there's party buses everywhere. People are drunk all the time, unfortunately, but, try to avoid peak hours, peak events when, drunk drivers might be on the road. Pedestrian and motorcycle specific statistics. Tennessee is a very dangerous place to do either of these things, to be a pedestrian, a bicyclist, or a motorcyclist. There were nearly 200 motorcycle deaths in 2023. And roughly the same number of pedestrian deaths. I've made a recent video about a specific crosswalk here in Nashville where someone has died and another person was just injured. So there's a big systemic problem with awareness of pedestrians and motorcyclists and driver behavior when it comes to those things. Motorcycle riders are 26 times more likely to be killed in a crash. That obviously has to do with the lack of protection and just the difference between the vehicles. But just shows you how vulnerable motorcyclists really are and the need for aggressive legal representation if you are a motorcyclist who is injured. Hidden danger, this is an important one. Always wear your seatbelt, right? Unrestrained fatalities are a key data point. 354 people died in Tennessee who are not wearing their seatbelts. When you don't wear a seatbelt, your ejection risk, your risk of being thrown from the vehicle, is 165 times higher. And alcohol, there's a correlation that people who are drunk are also less likely to be wearing their seatbelt. Now, the obvious point here is to wear your seatbelt. I want to say one thing on this. In the average car wreck case, if you're not wearing your seatbelt, that's not going to come into evidence. Okay, so if your injuries are worse because you weren't wearing your seatbelt, in the state of Tennessee, they don't get to make that argument that, hey, maybe I ran the red light and T-boned you, but you weren't wearing your seatbelt. That doesn't come into evidence in a car accident case in the state of Tennessee unless you're bringing a products liability case. Now, you should still wear your seatbelt, obviously, to not have these injuries. But I'm just making this point to let you know that if you weren't wearing your seatbelt, it doesn't mean you don't have a car accident case. And in fact, the very fact that you were not wearing your seatbelt cannot be used against you in your insurance claim or in your trial for the car accident that you sustained. Why hire a lawyer if you have been in a car accident? The big one is insurance companies are incentivized to pay as little as possible, and it's our job to make them pay more. And we, know their software, we know their tactics, we know what they're looking for, we know how to make the arguments with them. If that's not convincing enough, you should focus on your recovery. If you have been in a car accident, you need to get the treatment that you need. You need to recover. You do not need to be also thinking about gathering all these files and bills and records and investigating and calling witnesses and getting recorded statements and all the stuff we do. Focus on your recovery. Let us have that headache for you. The last thing I would say is thorough investigation. Back to the point about truck accidents, all the different players that could be involved, all the different defendants, you're not going to know all the angles that might be out there unless you hire a lawyer. You might do a pretty good job on your own negotiating with the at-fault insurance company, but if there were other avenues to go after, if there was a police chase, if there was a construction accident zone, or it was the construction company's fault for the zone that they set up, for example, we've had both of those types of cases, which added significant value. You're not going to be able to do that on your own. So that is an area where injury lawyers can really provide a lot of value to you and make it worth your while. So know this, there is a 1-year deadline in Tennessee for bringing your car accident claim. It's called the statute of limitations. You've got to do that. You got to get moving quickly. A lot of people, unfortunately, find out that, they called too late. They waited. Maybe it was in the back of their mind, for whatever reason. Maybe someone died and they were, just grieving and dealing with all of the funeral things and estate planning and all that, and it just didn't occur to them. 1-year statute of limitations. Do not delay. I'm going to put a link in the description to a free car accident guide, all the documents you need to gather if you've been in a car accident, if you need help with negotiating with an insurance company, if they've made you an offer. So click that link. We do free case evaluations, meaning if you want to call me or one of the lawyers in our firm, talk to us for free, no obligation, we do that as well. I'm going to link to our most recent video on whether you should accept a $15,000 offer from an insurance company, how you can evaluate whether that's a good offer. So click that next video. Thanks for watching.